What if addiction isn't about weakness at all, but about a broken search for meaning? Carl Jung believed addicts aren't just chasing substances, they're chasing transcendence. He called it spiritus, contra spiritum, spirit against spirit. And he warned, until we face the soul's thirst for wholeness, recovery will always fail. Today, we uncover Jung's shocking insight that turned addiction from a disease into a spiritual crisis demanding transformation. Carl Jung's ideas about the human mind are among the most influential in psychology. He believed that every person carries within them a vast inner world filled with symbols, dreams, fears, and unspoken truths. Unlike many other thinkers of his time, Jung did not see the mind as just a machine of thoughts and behaviors. He saw it as a living universe, one that shapes our lives in ways we rarely understand. His work focused on concepts like the shadow, archetypes, and individuation, all of which explain why people act, feel, and struggle the way they do. The shadow is one of Jung's most famous ideas. It represents the parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or refuse to admit exist. Everyone has a shadow, whether they realize it or not. It contains not only qualities we consider negative, like anger, envy, or selfishness, but also hidden strengths that we never develop because we are too afraid to face them. Jung believed that ignoring the shadow makes a person weaker. When we deny these hidden sides, they don't disappear, they control us from the dark, influencing our choices, relationships, and emotions. Facing the shadow, though uncomfortable, is one of the most powerful steps toward personal growth. Another key idea Jung explored is the concept of archetypes. Archetypes are universal symbols or patterns that appear in myths, religions, stories, and dreams across all cultures. For example, the hero, the wise old man, the mother, and the trickster are all archetypes. These figures are not random. They reflect deep truths about human experience. Jung believed archetypes live within what he called the collective unconscious, the shared memory of humanity. This explains why similar stories and myths exist in cultures that never interacted. The collective unconscious carries the building blocks of human imagination, shaping how we see the world and how we see ourselves. Dreams were also central to Jung's work. Unlike Freud, who often interpreted dreams as hidden desires, Jung saw them as messages from the unconscious. He believed dreams are a bridge between the conscious mind and the deeper layers of the psyche. They reveal truths we ignore while awake, offering guidance about our struggles, fears, and potential paths. To Jung, paying attention to dreams was not superstition, but an essential tool for understanding ourselves. Each symbol in a dream has layers of meaning, often pointing toward personal growth or unresolved conflict. Jung's most important goal for every individual was what he called individuation. This is the lifelong process of becoming whole, bringing the conscious and unconscious parts of the mind into harmony. Individuation is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming real, embracing every side of ourselves. Jung taught that people often feel empty, lost, or broken because they are cut off from parts of who they truly are. When a person begins the journey of individuation, they move toward a deeper sense of meaning and inner balance. It requires courage because it means confronting fears, shadows, and the uncomfortable truths we usually avoid. But through this process, a person becomes fully themselves. For Jung, the human psyche was not just a personal matter, but something deeply connected to society and history. He argued that when individuals fail to integrate their shadows, entire societies can fall into chaos. He saw this during the rise of Nazism in Germany, where suppressed anger, fear, and collective trauma erupted into destructive political movements. Jung warned that if people ignore their inner world, they project their darkness onto others, creating enemies and fueling hatred. This made his work not only psychological, but also moral. He wanted people to realize that facing their inner struggles is part of preventing outer violence and destruction. At the same time, Jung's theories were filled with hope. He believed that within every individual lies the potential for wisdom, creativity, and transformation. By exploring symbols, myths, and dreams, people can find meaning in their suffering and strength in their struggles. Instead of being trapped by unconscious forces, they can learn to work with them. Jung described this as a dialogue with the unconscious, listening to the messages it sends, respecting its power, and learning from its symbols. Jung's work also emphasized the importance of spirituality. Unlike many scientists of his time, he did not dismiss religion or mystical experiences as illusions. He believed they reflected real psychological needs. The search for God, meaning, or transcendence, is part of the human soul. Jung saw that without some sense of the sacred, people often fall into despair or destructive addictions. He did not tell people what to believe, but encouraged them to find a path that connects them with something greater than themselves. For him, the spiritual journey and the psychological journey were closely linked, both leading toward wholeness. Another fascinating part of Jung's ideas is his belief in synchronicity. This is the experience of meaningful coincidences, events that may not be connected by cause and effect, but still feel deeply related. For example, thinking about an old friend just before they call, or dreaming of a symbol that later appears in real life. Jung believed these events show that the universe is more connected than we usually think. There are signs that the inner and outer worlds are woven together in mysterious ways. Synchronicity reminded people that life is not only about logic and control, but also about mystery and meaning. Jung's teachings continue to influence psychology, literature, art, and even modern self-help. Many people today use his concepts to understand their own struggles, relationships, and spiritual questions. Therapists draw on his ideas to help patients explore their dreams and confront their shadows. Writers and filmmakers use archetypes to craft stories that resonate deeply with audiences. Spiritual seekers turn to his work for guidance on finding meaning in life. Jung's legacy endures because he touched on truths that are universal and timeless. Jung believed that the greatest task of a human being is to live authentically, to discover who they really are beneath masks, fears, and expectations. He knew that this is not easy. It requires looking inward, confronting darkness, and listening to the voice of the unconscious. But he also knew it is worth it. A person who goes through this process gains strength, wisdom, and peace that cannot be shaken by the outside world. Jung saw the human soul not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived, and he devoted his life to helping people enter that mystery with courage and openness. Jung's exploration of the unconscious led him to develop methods for people to connect with it more directly. One of the most famous is a practice he called active imagination. Unlike daydreaming, this method involves consciously entering into dialogue with the figures and symbols that emerge from the unconscious. For example, a person might close their eyes, visualize a dream image, and then allow it to speak or interact with them. Jung saw this as a way of giving the unconscious a voice, letting hidden truths rise into awareness. Active imagination often revealed insights about conflicts, desires, and unacknowledged strengths. Another powerful tool Jung encouraged was the study of personal myths. He believed that every life is a story, and each person lives within a narrative that shapes their choices and emotions. Many people never realize the story they are unconsciously following. Some see themselves as victims, others as saviors, rebels, or wanderers. By becoming aware of our personal myths, we can decide whether to keep living them or create new ones. Jung felt this gave people freedom, the freedom to write their own destiny instead of being trapped by old patterns. Jung also paid attention to symbols found in art, religion, and culture. He collected thousands of images from across the world, from ancient alchemy texts to tribal rituals. He noticed that the same themes appeared again and again, even in unrelated cultures. For example, the idea of death and rebirth is universal, appearing in myths of the phoenix, the resurrection of Christ, or seasonal cycles of crops. Jung interpreted these as archetypes expressing deep truths about human life. They remind us that suffering, loss, and transformation are not random events, but essential parts of existence. His fascination with alchemy is especially interesting. While many dismissed alchemy as outdated superstition, Jung saw it as a symbolic map of psychological transformation. Alchemists tried to turn base metals into gold, but Jung believed this was really a metaphor for inner change. The process of purifying, breaking down, and transforming matter reflected the psychological journey of turning the raw material of the self into spiritual wholeness. He saw in alchemy a mirror of individuation, the gradual path toward becoming complete. Jung's relationship with Freud shaped much of his early career. At first, Jung was seen as Freud's most promising student, even his crown prince, but their ideas diverged sharply. Freud emphasized sexuality as the driving force of the psyche, while Jung thought this view was too narrow. He believed the unconscious was not only about repressed desires, but also about creativity, spirituality, and meaning. This difference eventually caused a painful break between them. Though Jung respected Freud, he could not confine the vastness of the psyche to one explanation. Their split was a defining moment that allowed Jung to develop his own path fully. Jung's work was not without criticism. Some accused him of being too mystical, blurring the line between psychology and religion. Others argued that his theories lacked scientific proof. Jung himself admitted that much of his work was difficult to measure or test by traditional science. Yet he insisted that psychology could not ignore the spiritual and symbolic aspects of human life. To him, the soul was as real as the body, and dismissing it left people incomplete. This debate continues today. As modern psychology balances measurable data with deeper human experiences, despite the controversies, Jung's influence spread far beyond psychology. Artists drew on his ideas to understand creativity as a dialogue with the unconscious. Writers used archetypes to create characters that felt timeless and universal. Religious thinkers found in his work a bridge between modern psychology and ancient faith. Even business leaders began applying Jung's concepts to leadership and teamwork, using his famous personality theory, introversion and extroversion as a tool to understand people's differences. Perhaps one of Jung's most practical contributions was his typology of personality. He introduced the concepts of introversion and extroversion, describing how people direct their energy either inward toward thoughts or outward toward the world. He also identified 4 functions of consciousness: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Together, these categories laid the foundation for the popular Myers-Briggs type indicator, still widely used today. While the test simplifies Jung's ideas, it shows how his work continues to shape how we think about personality and relationships. At the heart of all Jung's work was the conviction that meaning is essential for human life. He believed people suffer most not from pain or hardship, but from the feeling that life has no purpose. Many of his patients were not clinically ill, but spiritually empty. They had success, wealth, or comfort, yet felt hollow. Jung guided them to search within, to listen to their dreams, explore symbols, and connect with something greater than themselves. He saw this as the medicine for the modern soul. In the end, Jung offered more than a theory of psychology. He offered a vision of the human being as a bridge between the visible and invisible, the conscious and unconscious, the personal and universal. His message was clear. Wholeness comes not from avoiding darkness, but from embracing it. Not from denying mystery, but from living it. Jung's perspective on healing was very different from many traditional methods. Instead of trying to fix symptoms quickly, he believed therapy should aim to help a person uncover the deeper roots of their struggles. He described the therapeutic journey as a partnership between analyst and patient, a process of exploration rather than correction. Jung often said that the goal of therapy was not to make a person normal, but to help them become who they truly are. For him, mental suffering was often the result of a disconnection from the self, and the cure was reconnection. One of Jung's greatest strengths as a thinker was his ability to bridge opposites. He constantly spoke about the balance of light and dark, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, science and spirituality. He believed the psyche is full of polarities, and that wholeness comes when these opposites are acknowledged and integrated. Denying one side creates imbalance. For example, if a person only identifies with their rational side and ignores their emotions, they may become cold and detached. Conversely, if someone lives only through emotions and ignores reason, they may lose stability. True health, Jung taught, comes from embracing both. The concept of the anima and animus is an example of this integration. Jung argued that every man carries an unconscious feminine side anima, and every woman carries an unconscious masculine side animus. These inner figures often appear in dreams or fantasies and influence relationships. For instance, a man who ignores his anima may project it onto women, expecting them to embody qualities he has denied in himself. Similarly, a woman who ignores her animus may project it onto men, idealizing or resenting them. By becoming aware of these inner opposites, people can reclaim their projections and achieve more balanced relationships. Jung also observed that people go through important psychological stages across their lifespan. In youth, the focus is often on establishing identity, career, and external success. But as people enter midlife, these outer goals may no longer bring fulfillment. Jung noticed that many people in midlife experience a crisis, feeling empty despite having achieved what society values. He believed this crisis is an invitation to turn inward, to explore the unconscious and seek meaning. In this way, aging is not a decline, but an opportunity for deeper growth and wisdom. Religion and myth fascinated Jung throughout his life. He saw them as expressions of universal psychological truths. Even if a person does not belong to a faith, Jung believed religious symbols still shape their inner life. For example, the image of the cross, the circle, or the tree of life all carry deep archetypal meanings. These symbols are like roadmaps of the soul, guiding people through suffering and transformation. Jung did not ask people to adopt specific beliefs, but he encouraged them to pay attention to the symbols that speak to their inner world. For him, ignoring spirituality entirely left people vulnerable to despair. His idea of the self is one of his most profound contributions. Jung described the self as the central archetype, the totality of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious. The self is not the same as the ego, which is only the conscious I. Instead, the self represents the greater whole of a person, the unifying center that guides the process of individuation. People often experience the self through powerful symbols, such as a circle, a mandala, or a divine figure in dreams. Jung saw the self as both a psychological reality and a spiritual presence, calling each person toward wholeness. One of Jung's most creative methods of exploring the self was through mandala drawings. A mandala is a circular design, often divided into symmetrical patterns. Jung noticed that many patients spontaneously drew mandalas during therapy, especially during periods of transformation. He interpreted these as expressions of the inner drive toward balance and unity. Jung himself drew mandalas daily for years, using them as a way to track his inner development. Today, mandalas are used worldwide in meditation and therapy. Echoing Jung's insight into their healing power, Jung's openness to mystical experiences set him apart from most scientists of his era. He did not shy away from subjects like visions, paranormal events, or near-death experiences. He considered them meaningful psychological realities, whether or not they could be explained scientifically. His famous concept of synchronicity fits into this framework. He believed that meaningful coincidences reflect the hidden order of the universe, moments when inner and outer worlds mirror each other. While some critics dismissed this as unscientific, many found in it a powerful way of understanding experiences that traditional science overlooks. Another lasting part of Jung's legacy is his impact on creativity. He believed that artists, writers, and musicians often act as bridges between the unconscious and the collective imagination. Their work gives form to archetypes, allowing society to confront truths it might otherwise ignore. Jung himself was deeply creative, not only in writing, but also in painting, carving, and even building. His famous retreat at Bollingen, a tower he built with his own hands, reflected his love of creativity as a spiritual act. He saw creation not only as self-expression, but as a dialogue with the soul. Jung's personal life also shaped his work. Though he was a respected doctor and scholar, he struggled with his own inner conflicts. His long period of personal crisis after his break with Freud became the foundation for much of his later thought. During this time, Jung experienced vivid visions, voices, and symbolic encounters. Rather than dismiss them, he recorded them carefully in what became known as the Red Book. This massive, illustrated manuscript revealed his private dialogue with the unconscious and later inspired many of his theories. For decades, it remained unpublished. But when it finally became public in 2009, it showed the depth of Jung's inner journey. Despite his achievements, Jung remained humble about the limits of knowledge. He often said that he did not believe in God, but that he knew of God's reality through personal experience. For him, psychological truth and spiritual truth were intertwined, and both required openness rather than rigid dogma. He encouraged people to seek their own direct experiences of meaning, instead of relying solely on external authorities. Through all his writings and teachings, Jung never claimed to have all the answers. Instead, he offered tools and insights for others to explore their own paths. His greatest gift was not a finished system, but an invitation to look inward, to face the shadow, to listen to dreams, to honor symbols, and to walk the lifelong road of individuation. He believed that every individual carries within them the potential for transformation, and that by pursuing it, they not only heal themselves, but also contribute to the healing of the world. Jung's influence grew steadily throughout the 20th century, though it was often outside the traditional centers of psychology. While Freud's theories dominated academic institutions for decades, Jung's ideas spread among artists, writers, religious thinkers, and ordinary people searching for meaning. His books reached audiences who were not scientists, but seekers people, who felt something deeper was missing in modern life. This broad appeal ensured that his legacy would endure long after many other theories faded. One of the reasons Jung remained so relevant is that he addressed the crisis of modernity directly. As science advanced and traditional religion lost authority, many people felt adrift, cut off from deeper meaning. Jung saw this loss as one of the greatest psychological challenges of the modern age. He argued that the human need for myth and spirituality cannot be erased. Even if people reject traditional religions, the archetypal images still appear in dreams. In art, in politics, and even in consumer culture, the worship of celebrities, the fascination with superheroes, and the hunger for fantasy stories all reflect the same inner need for archetypes and meaning. Jung's writings on alchemy, mythology, and comparative religion offered modern people a way to reconnect with these deeper layers without rejecting science. He did not ask people to abandon reason, but to balance it with imagination. In this sense, Jung anticipated many of today's discussions about the importance of mental health, spirituality, and cultural storytelling. He saw that people cannot thrive on logic alone. They need symbols, rituals, and narratives that give life purpose. Without them, societies fall into cynicism, addiction, or violence. Education was another area where Jung's ideas found application. He believed children should not only be trained in skills, but also guided to explore their inner world. Dreams, creativity, and imagination were, for him, as important as reading or mathematics. He warned that when education ignores the soul, young people may succeed outwardly but feel inwardly broken, though not always applied in formal schools. His vision influenced many educators and therapists who work with children. Today, Jung's approach also influenced the development of depth psychology, a field that studies the unconscious aspects of the human mind. While Freud is often credited as the founder of psychoanalysis, Jung expanded the field by integrating myth, spirituality, and culture. Depth psychology inspired countless therapeutic approaches, from dream analysis to art therapy. Even the modern emphasis on holistic healing treating body, mind, and spirit as interconnected owes much to Jung's pioneering vision. Critics continued to challenge Jung, especially in academic psychology, where measurable data is highly valued. They argued that concepts like archetypes or synchronicity are difficult to prove. Yet Jung himself admitted this, insisting that the human soul is not always measurable in numbers. For him, psychology was not only about experiments, but also about the lived experience of being human. This openness allowed his work to reach people outside academia, where strict rules often limit imagination. In the realm of spirituality, Jung provided a bridge between Eastern and Western traditions. He studied Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, finding parallels between their teachings and his own observations of the psyche. For instance, the mandala, which appears in Hindu and Buddhist practice, reflected the same drive toward wholeness that Jung saw in Western patience drawings. By highlighting these connections, Jung encouraged dialogue between cultures at a time when globalization was only beginning. Today, his work is often cited in interfaith and cross-cultural discussions. Jung's emphasis on the unconscious also anticipated later developments in neuroscience. While he could not measure brain activity with modern tools, his observations about hidden influences on behavior align with what we now know about unconscious processes in the brain. Modern psychology confirms that much of human decision-making happens below the level of awareness. Echoing Jung's insights about the power of the unconscious, perhaps the most personal aspect of Jung's legacy lies in his encouragement to face suffering. He did not promise quick solutions or painless methods. Instead, he taught that pain, struggle, and conflict are often necessary steps toward growth. He saw depression, anxiety, and crises not only as problems, but as signals that the soul is calling for change. For him, the task of therapy was not to erase suffering, but to help people find meaning within it. This perspective has comforted countless people, giving them hope that even in darkness, transformation is possible. The Red Book, finally published in the 21st century, brought a new wave of interest in Jung. Readers were astonished by the vivid paintings, mystical dialogues, and symbolic stories he recorded during his personal crisis. It revealed that Jung was not only a thinker, but also a visionary, willing to explore the depths of his own mind at great risk. This book showed that his theories were not abstract guesses, but grounded in lived experience. It gave authenticity to his teachings, proving that he walked the same difficult path he asked others to follow. Jung died in 1961, but his ideas continued to spread. Institutes dedicated to his psychology were founded across the world, and his collected works remain widely studied. His concepts of introversion and extroversion are now part of everyday language. His understanding of archetypes shapes literature, film, and art. His vision of individuation inspires people in therapy, education, and spirituality. Even popular culture reflects his influence, from movies that use archetypal characters to self-help books that draw on his teachings. The question remains, why do Jung's ideas endure while so many other psychological theories fade? The answer lies in their depth and universality. Jung did not reduce the human being to instincts, behaviors, or brain chemicals. He recognized the mystery of the soul, the need for meaning, and the reality of the unconscious. He spoke to the whole person body, mind, and spirit. In a world that often fragments life into separate parts, Jung offered a vision of wholeness. Today, his teachings remain more relevant than ever. In an age of technology, information, and constant distraction, people are still searching for deeper purpose. Anxiety, loneliness, and emptiness plague modern societies. Just as Jung predicted they would if people ignored their inner world, his message continues to echo. Wholeness comes not from avoiding the unconscious, but from engaging with it. Not from denying mystery, but from embracing it. Carl Jung's legacy can be summed up in his own words: who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. This simple line captures his lifelong message. Looking outward brings us knowledge of the world, but looking inward brings us wisdom of the soul. Jung asked people to awaken to themselves, to honor the depths of their psyche, and to find in that journey the meaning that sustains life. His voice, though from another century, continues to guide countless people to dietos who dare to turn inward and embrace the adventure of becoming whole.